This looks better.
Looks delightful.
Okay, perfect. I'll give you some time to do that because I forgot to. Anyways, it'll take a while for people to come online anyway.
Terrible.
Let's see. One more. And some of our common friends will be jumping on really soon.
Our common friends. Our acquaintances.
Our uncommon friend.
All I've got in my head now is let's get down to business.
Shortly, we'll be down to business once we just.
Once you've sorted everything out.
Once we sort out the tech, it should be all good.
All good in the hood.
Okay. Just hoping that some light comes on now. Ta-da! Ta-da. Okay. You can do without this light.
I think it's good.
This
Anyway.
natural light is beautiful. I'll give you some more light here.
Oh,
More light.
I just don't want to look like I haven't got a nose.
All right. Let's begin.
What's that?
Basically, this thing.
It looks like an ankle tag.
It's not an ankle tag, but it basically sends sound waves and vibrations through your femur right up to your brain to reprogram your nervous system into the state that you want to get. And by the way, if you want, this mat is directly connected to the ground, so you're getting negative electrons.
I can't believe
Yeah, seriously.
how much
And if you
tech you've got in here for wellness.
and if you by any chance have like a sore feet or something, I also have like an neuroelectrical stimulator. So it's like you can put your feet onto that, and then it'll give you a massage.
We could do that after.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So looks like we're live. I just need
Ready
to
to rock.
put my ankle thing into clear and focused.
And do you think it works?
Yeah, it does.
You can feel it.
Yeah, I can feel it. I can't hear the sound, but I can sense the vibration, and it helps me a lot, especially when I have to meditate. I can literally sense it because meditation is one of those times where you have, you kind of like are in the zone, and there are not many distractions, so you can feel what's going on with your body, and I can jump straight into alpha waves. Like
Question.
Mm-hmm.
How can you use that? Like, do you then analyze a way to get into that state without
Mm-hmm.
this?
So it's basically over a period of time, if you constantly train your nervous system to respond in a way, and then you use environmental triggers like, let's say, sitting on that's my meditation spot, right?
Mhm.
So that's my meditation mat over there.
Cute.
And so you use those environmental triggers, you switch off your phone, you just, say a chant or something like that, and then your brain already knows that it's time for meditation.
Yeah.
And then it automatically shifts you into this relaxed mode
Without the ankle.
without having it.
That's good.
So this is just like a preparation tool. Get some water.
Into your clear and focused.
Clear and focus, and now I have my
Your hydrogen water.
hydrogen water. I have some nicotine running through the system, so we should be good.
Hard to try.
Right, so let's begin. Put this a bit here. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Shift with CJ podcast. This podcast is special. And why is it special? Because unlike other podcasts, we're doing this live, right from the Biohackers studio. And I have someone special with me on the show today. My guest on the show today is, well, I don't have words to describe her. She's a yogi. She's so intelligent. She's been a friend for a while. She does all these crazy acrobats like yoga, but like in a different way. And just a great human to talk to. We've been thinking about getting her on the show for a while now, and finally, time has come. So I present to you Sarah White.
What an introduction. Thanks.
You're
Hi,
welcome.
guys.
Well, yeah, I won't. I mentioned that Sarah is a friend, and normally I only meet Sarah in parties. But one of our other common friends, and we've been talking about going to one of her classes, and that's never happened. So, Sarah, I promise I'm going to be coming to one of your classes very soon.
You should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird to see you in this setting.
Yeah.
It's like now we're in the professional personas, right?
Well, this podcast is quite relaxed. So, you could use explicit language. You can talk about whatever you want to. Don't worry. Because if you talk about something wrong, we'll just edit it later.
But it's live. That's where the pressure's on, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Just don't look on that side.
Don't look.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell me, yoga. How did you get into yoga?
Oh, good one. I actually started it when I was suffering from really bad anxiety. 2016, period of my life where what's the word? I just felt like I was hollow. You know what I mean? I was just a shell. And there come to a point where I couldn't be in a public setting. And when people were looking at me and giving me eye contact, I just thought they were seeing straight through me, and they thought what a piece of crap I was, right? So my self-esteem was low, my anxiety was through the roof, and it was actually my dad who was like, look, Sarah, you need to do something about this. And I always wanted to try yoga, and it's quite funny because a period before that, I was with someone who said, if you do yoga, that's it, we're finished. I'm not going to be with you. And so when that ended and I was going through this time, I was like, do you know what? Yeah, no, yoga's, now it's time, now it's calling me. And I remember going into my first class and being absolutely petrified. I was in the back corner of the room, but as soon as it started and as soon as I kind of felt that zoning in, I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is something special, you know? So that's how I started.
Okay, so can I ask you, why were you facing that kind of an anxiety? Was there an event in your life, or were you, you had similar feelings when you were growing up? How did that kind of like show up in your life?
It's funny because I think growing up when I did, the word anxiety wasn't around. It wasn't something that was spoken about. I was always shy as a kid and very introverted until you know me, and then you know that I'm a bit wacko. But thinking back to like even in my teenage years and stuff, and struggling with just being in the crowd, of actually just speaking out loud when I was even in school settings and stuff, and the body systems, like, not that I was on the verge of panic attack, but if it was in a public situation, I would be like completely frozen. You know what I mean? So I think growing up, I definitely had that anxiety. I just didn't know what word to put to it. And then as I got older, I suppose I was regulating it, but then out of this relationship, which wasn't a very healthy relationship, that's when it kind of took hold of me, when I was no longer a person, but instead I was just this anxious ball, you know what I mean?
And your reaction is quite common, which I see these days, because yes, you're right. When we were growing up, like around 80s and 90s, there wasn't much focus on mental health. Neuroscience was still just in its early stages of development, so the world didn't really know what's going on in the mind. But now what we have seen with all the progress that's happening is that life's structure depends on basic biological programs, and these biological programs are similar in every human, animal, well, a mammal, even in like species of ants and stuff. And one of the reactions that the nervous system has when you are facing a situation which you cannot handle is either to fight that situation, right? So let's say you face a situation where someone's going to attack you, you traditionally like either try to out dominate that opponent, you either run away from that opponent, but there is another F. These are the three F's of life. That's flee or freeze.
Yeah.
So normally people who haven't trained their nervous system enough, and people who I speak to who have had some past history of, either being shy like yourself or not getting, always running away from a situation, and they don't give their nervous system a chance to adapt and kind of like stand up to that, they normally get into the freeze mode. And that's probably what was happening to you.
100%. And it's funny you saying that, because the yoga that I teach is all about this nervous systems. But I was a massive freezer where I didn't know how to self-regulate. I didn't know how to kind of just breathe and pause and respond. So this is when I was like, nah, shut down. And that was, a problem up until even like mid-20s. That I've been through the yoga and stuff, that I've been starting to say, actually, hang on a minute, relax, let's see what's going on, and then respond, rather than complete shutdown of the system.
And how many months or years did it take you to kind of see the first level of changes? And I'm asking this because a lot of people today have this mindset that everything should happen instantly, everything should happen in the moment, and what people don't realize is that things take time and it takes a lot of effort. You might look at someone else and their neurobiology and neurochemistry would be completely different than yours. So just because your neighbor or your friend could do something like easily doesn't mean that you will go through the same journey. Everyone is in a different journey. So in your journey, how long did it take you effectively to kind of like calm that voice in your head, which is saying, people are looking at me right now?
Probably about a year is when I saw a massive shift in me. Like just even my whole demeanor and the way that I was just being able to relax in social settings. But it's funny because I think these journeys as well, you don't know how far you are down the road until you get triggered again, right? So for me, it was like, I feel like I'm fine because I've kind of shut the world out to work on me. Yeah. And then after the year, you get into different situations and then you start seeing these little flags come up again and you're like, actually, I thought I was doing well, but let's go back and kind of reiterate those kind of teachings.
It's funny. It's happened to me a lot of times. Like you mentioned, you take yourself out of a situation and then you're just in this four walls and you're telling yourself all these positive affirmations and you're telling yourself how well you're doing. And then life happens and then someone throws a lemon at you and then you're like, oh man, I just want to, you want to cut people in traffic. If someone like crosses you in traffic, you're just going to start using not so good words. But yeah, I want everyone to know that it does take time and it's a journey, guys.
And that's part of being human, I think, and I always say, like, you're never gonna know how far you are in this growth if you always just surround yourself with the people that make you feel good, right? I often think it's the people that kind of annoy us, that trigger us. They're the ones where you have to really look at, and they're the ones that actually give the bigger gift, because you're like, there's obviously still a button under there that needs to be resolved,
Yeah, that's why they say, like, go to your critics first, because they're going to give you more chances and more area of growth. Because your friends can be just like, you know what, you're fine, everything is okay.
Good.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Nice. Yeah, true.
Now, when I look at yoga, let's talk about when I look at yoga, there are so many branches of yoga, right? You've got Hatha yoga, you've got Iyengar, Bikram, Kundalini, and so many of them. If someone wants to take a shot at this, right? They're listening to this, they're like, oh, you know what, CJ and Sarah are talking about something interesting. I might just book my first yoga session. And then they look at all these options. And then all these options make another level of decision-making fatigue, because you're like, oh, should I go for this one? But that model is going for this one, and this celebrity is going for this one. How does a person navigate through all these areas of yoga?
I think always be open to try and shift, especially in the start. I think the teacher has a lot to do with it, and look at the style of yoga as in kind of what it's going to be like physically as well. So I think that different styles of yoga, obviously, they pull in different types of people, right? If you want a little bit more of a masculine energy because you feel like you need it, then you'll go down the Ashtanga route. If you want more of a feminine energy, go more down the embodied, the slow flow route. Hatha yoga is a great place to start, just because it has all the postures, the alignments that you'll kind of learn there, you'll take into different yoga classes as well. But I would just say once you get like a basis, maybe in hatha, then start. And say if you do start with different classes and you're like, yoga's not for me, keep trying. Like, and especially with the different teachers, like different styles of teaching, their voices and stuff, you just need to find the right one that resonates, that you connect to, and then the magic starts.
All right. Okay. And another tip for everyone who's listening, if it's your first day, don't go to the front of the class, because this is what I tried to do in my first Ashtanga class. And I remember clearly, because I think I'd done some like flow yoga before. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. And, my ego kicked in and I'm like, I'm going to go to the front of the class. And trust me, it's not a good experience, especially if you're doing some difficult styles of yoga like Ashtanga, where everyone knows what they're doing.
Was it a led class or it was just like Mysore style?
There was a teacher, but this teacher didn't talk much. They were just going with it, and everyone knew what to do. And I mean, it's quite interesting because you figure out like, you don't know much. So it's always good to start behind and look at everyone, see what they're doing. And most of the times they can't look at you. So, it's always a win-win situation. But yoga also has, so when I think about yoga, I think about all these different poses and, in Sanskrit, the ancient Hindu terminology, you call it asanas, but they're so-called 8 limbs of yoga. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And you have different kind of things that go on. So yoga is not only about like the poses, but it's about, I don't remember them, but I know that there is one thing called pranayama, which is breath work. And then you have meditation, which is called dhyana. And there are other kind of things as well. Yeah. So can you walk us through like what are the basics of all these things? Like,
it's like, so asana, I think it's the 3rd limb. You have under the 8 limbs, it's basically, I'd say it's kind of like, you get these books now, it's like the book on how to do life. These are the 8 limbs of yoga. So it'll be training the body, training the mind to reach that spot of enlightenment, right? So if you follow all 8 of them, then hopefully at the end you're like, you can just sit in your seat, right?
Okay.
But it's this is why I say like asana is such a small part of it, because you have so much more. It's like a way of life. It's a way to conduct yourself. It's a way to self-study. It's, I think, more of an introspection. So just working out, okay, who I am first, how I kind of work, and particularly with listening to where the mind goes and stuff like this, and then how I can kind of live in a way that has the least amount of hurtful impact in the world around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that why you are vegan?
Partly, yes.
Partly, yes. Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting to know, because a lot of people would consider yoga to be this, cool exercise form or a way to meet new people, going to all these group classes, especially now that yoga is so famous all around the world. And I mean, it's funny because, when you predate back to yoga's history, I think it goes, some official records say it's 5,000 years old. There are some records that even go back 10,000 years. And, the first yoga was probably put on some palm leaves and, those scriptures. And then there were some people who were like, hey, you know what, let me translate this into something. And then you had, in Hinduism, we have something called as Vedas, which is a kind of like instruction manual for life in a way. And I think yoga first appeared in the Rig Veda, and it's like constantly evolving from there. And then there were different schools of thoughts. Now, all of this, and one of the things that you mentioned that really highlighted something, was that it's a way of life, right? It's not just about booking a class, going to the class and like just stretching it out or just doing some breath work in the class itself. And then you go back home and then, you're probably no, I wouldn't say bad, but you're not such a pleasant husband, or you're having.
I like that you said husband and not wife. I'm like, one for the women.
Well, like a husband or wife, or your if you're teaching something, or if you're bad coworker, or you're not such good of a boss, and all of those things will impact your asanas in some way. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, I think it's more about taking the awareness of being in that room and being fully connected with yourself and your body, and seeing it's kind of like the practice helps strip everything off, right? So you come in with all your crap, all this kind of energy, and I always see yoga and the movement practice of it as a kind of self-regulation, right? It's bringing the system down, it's bringing stability, a little bit more coherence. I like to think it as waves, right? So when I do this, it's like you come in like this and then you come out fully rounded. And then you can start to see that actually behind all this reaction stuff to the stimuli outside lives a wholeness and a kind of peaceful person, right? And it's taking that and whatever reflections, whatever's come up onto the mat out into life outside. So I always say in my classes, like, I always do a pause. I'm like, just take time to receive whatever you're receiving, because whether it be the way that they talk to themselves in class will be exactly the way that they're talking to themselves outside of it. So whether they're talking to themselves with compassion, or whether it's like, oh, I'm not good enough, and whether it's from a place of lack, right? It's seeing that and being like, oh, actually, I'm talking to myself a little bit like shit. Let's do something better. Or something as simple as, if it's just physical while you're there, noticing when things get tough, where does the tension come into the body? For you, it might be your jaw. For someone, it might be the shoulders. For someone else, they might hold it in the belly. Again, noticing where the stress comes up in a yoga class is a highlighter for you then when you go to work, when your boss is doing your head in, when you're in a traffic jam. Where does the tension come? It's going to be the same place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's just relating whatever goes on into that in that room, how I can bring it into life outside and make me live. For me, it's just all about lightness, Life's heavy enough as it is. So how can I just live a little bit more lightly and a little bit more in tune with myself?
do you believe that emotions have a certain amount of energy, and when your emotions are dysregulated or you have some kind of an emotional disbalance, then that emotion reflects onto a certain, I know that in Chinese traditional medicine, every emotion has an energy, and that energy reflects on a certain organ in the body. But oftentimes you will also see that, let's say, if you're fearful of something, right, if you're scared of something, then that emotion normally shows up in your neck, and then people tell you like, hey, it's such a pain in the neck or something like that. And these things come up because somewhere or the other, every time you suppress an emotion, or every time you're saying that, oh, you know what, I'm just going to let this one go right now, and you don't talk about it, or you don't let that energy out in a way, it gets stuck somewhere in the body. And now for some people it might be fear, for some people it might be just anxiety, for some people it might be uncertainty about the future. Do you see in your practice, and when you're talking to your students, that a lot of people come in with these emotional dysregulations, and then suddenly they're in a pose and they focus and then they breathe and they see or they sense the energy shift in a certain way?
Yeah, there's it's funny because I teach this in my teacher training, and
Okay.
for me it's a lot to do with the fascia and how it works. But in regards to where they store it in the body, when you were saying about fight or flight, right? Our automatic response when we're in flight or fright is this. We kind of round in, we protect the vital organs, right?
Yeah.
So this is a lot of the time, because people can be in fight or flight when they're in their work, they have no idea. A lot of the time people come into yoga like this, right? Same with me when I first started, I was closed, I was in with myself. I think having just working then with physically expanding the front of the chest and stuff, it's going to release things, because people are not used to being in that position, right? So once they feel open, that like body language, it not only gives signals to the people in front of you, but it's signaling to yourself. So if everyone, when you're watching this, if you stand like this for 2 minutes, power stance, automatically that energy starts to lift, right? So that's one of them. But also when you're working with the fascia and stuff, so if you've been like this for a long time, fascia starts to kind of switch off. It gets loaded and loaded into a thick barrier, right? So it gets enough kind of food source to keep functioning, but at a very low level. So it's like it's sleeping, right? And all this stuff that's got stuck here, the sleeping stuff, once you start moving and manipulating it, or once you start bringing blood flow into places that haven't felt it for a very long time, that's when this kind of emotional release comes, because again, you're feeling an area, you're starting to get more mind-body connection into them. So people say, yes, it's because your emotions are stuck into your hips. Granted, science-wise, it's because that fascia that's been stuck and kind of glumped together is starting to open. All that stuff that was stuck is being released back into the system.
That's very interesting. I've never heard an explanation like that. So thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing that. And I like how you mentioned power poses, because one of the biggest fears, one of the top biggest fears in the world is public speaking. And if you speak to anyone who is good in public speaking, they will always tell you that right before they enter this stage, they're still scared. And one of the tricks that have been used by a lot of public speakers is called power poses, like Sarah mentioned. And you could do it before bungee jumping. You could before doing anything stressful or anything that makes you fearful. Every time you expand your body, every time you have the Superman's pose, or the gorilla pose or something like that, you automatically give signals to your nervous system that you are in charge. And there, neurochemistry wise, there's a lot of testosterone that goes into the system. You feel more confident, you feel you're in charge of the situation. And it depends on every person. Some people who have their heart rate goes up really fast, they can try some breathing exercises, they can calm their breathing down. And it's really interesting. I think Mel Robbins wrote a book, or she had a TED talk on it. It's called 5 Power Poses. So if you guys want to check it out, do it. There are some infographics about it as well. And
There's
that works.
Amy Cuddy as well.
Amy
on
Cuddy?
TED Talk. She's done an amazing one, and she did research on job interviews. They had people sit like this before a job interview and people like open. Obviously the people who are open do better, but yeah. Sorry to ruin the TED Talk, but it's really good, guys.
No, yeah, just go. It's good that we speak about this, and we spike that curiosity in the listeners, and this results in them going and learning new stuff. So that's good. Even the fascia point, that is very interesting, because another thing that a lot of people don't know is that the fascia is also a lot of electricity runs through our body. Is made out of chemicals. There's neurochemistry, and there's even an electric effect on the body. And what the fascia is pseudo electric. So what happens is every time you run, let's say, not like with electrodes and stuff like that, but when you're hydrated enough and you can carry the electrical charge through the fascia, then things become more easier. When you have, before starting this interview, I put some minerals, full spectrum minerals in the water. When you have more minerals into the water, which is like sodium, calcium, potassium, these also are conductors of electricity. So you see a lot of people who are nervous or anxious, most of the time they haven't been connected to the ground. This is also one reason why we have this grounding mat at this point, because this supplies your body with negative electrons. And when you think of it, every cell in our body, right, has a negative charge. Normally, every cell, we have trillions of cells, and all these cells are on, I think, minus 20 milliwatts of negative charge. And every time you have a strong emotion, whether it's like fear or anger or frustration and things like that, or you're eating foods that will harm you in some way, that increases inflammation, and that actually increases the positive charge inside the cell. So inside of the cell, there's a negative charge, and outside of the cell, there's a positive charge. The more you expose yourself to environmental toxins, whether it be from bad thinking or a stressful situation or poor food or poor sleeping habits, the cell inside starts becoming positively charged. And there's something called as voltage gated calcium channels. So what this does is every time the cell gets positive, it pumps out more calcium into the cell, and the cell, as a function, it starts getting excited a lot, up to a point that it starts dying. So a lot of people who would have this kind of a problem, I would also tell them that, keep yourself hydrated, maybe, stretch a little bit, use the foam roller, get some really good spectrum minerals inside your cells, go for a walk barefoot outside, connect with the ground, connect with nature, and that automatically lowers your stress response a lot. Now, when you teach your yoga, I know you've done a recent retreat in Zanzibar.
Yes.
And how was that? Because there, you're completely surrounded by nature. Do you feel that people get better results when they're in an environment which is not made of brick and concrete, and they're more, they're more connected to the ground or with negative electrons, or?
Yes, I feel like as well it's more of a mental state. So obviously the environment plays a big what's the word I'm looking for? Role in it.
Yeah.
But I think just people are more receptive, and automatically, okay, environment, it's calm, you hear the waves, already the body's like, yeah man, I'm on holiday. Having that act of I'm going on holiday to do something good for me, and it's automatically shifted, right? So you've automatically, okay, I'm away from the stresses, I'm away from normal everyday life, I'm here to feel good. And I think that people are way more relaxed, as opposed to when I see someone come into the yoga class straight from work and they're hyped up there, and you can tell, like as a teacher, you start to read the room when you first come in.
Yeah.
So on retreats, you get into that space, everyone already, like, because I call the start of a class like the drop in. So already the drop into the class is like instant, the energy's already, everyone's kind of folded in. Whereas when I do it in Dubai, when it's a 6:30 at night class, or like 7:30, something like this, everyone comes with that kind of like static energy.
Yeah.
And the drop in, it takes a lot longer, and you start to see, okay, then the shoulders will go after 5 minutes, or then people start softening, and then that's when I'll start the class.
And this is something that normally I've been trying to hack this for a very long time. Basically, you guys can experiment with this in your own life. Every time, like Sarah mentioned, you go on vacation, suddenly the world around you changes, whether it is the stress, whether it's something else. The fact that you're in vacation changes everything. And I call it the vacation lens. So you put on these, let's say, glasses, and then everything that you see from those lenses, like from vacation. And the great part is that nothing in your body has really changed. You're the same person that you were before getting onto the flight or getting onto the boat and going for vacation. And you're the same person when you arrive. But the lens with what you see the world completely changes, and you become more relaxed. You become more compassionate. You give yourself more space to maybe eat that food, or you give yourself more space to talk to a stranger, and things change. And then let's say you get a call from back home, and I hope this never happens to anyone, but you get a call, and then you hear a bad news or something that demands your attention, energy, and focus, and automatically that vacation lens switches off, and you get into this whole hype mode. And I've been trying to do this for a very long time. One of the things that I have figured out is that if I'm having a hard day at work, or something stressful going on, I literally step out from the environment that I'm in, whether it's going to be this room where I'm podcasting, I'm writing articles and things like that, and I go into a different place, because location has a big impact on energy. Every location that you're in, whether it be the Wi-Fi routers or like other electronic devices, or your boss's face, that location carries a significant amount of energy. And when you're able to move the location, and then you have other things like you have sight, you have smell. Normally what I would do is like I'll take some essential oils, sniff onto them, and then tell myself, okay, CJ, now there's vacation lenses on. So I'll like pretend that I'm wearing these other lenses of vacation, and suddenly things start to change. And it's one of those hacks that you guys can use. It's still not perfect, because I'm still trying to get in line with that. And I like how you mentioned that it takes people some time to like really relax, because also what's happening, Sarah, is that our body is sending our brain a lot of information, right? Like it's approximated that is 11 million bits of information every minute. And our brain, being as genius as it could be, can only receive from 50 to 20 bits of information per minute. So can you imagine all that information that our body is going to try to send? And the environment, we haven't even spoken about the environment. The environment is completely different, but your body itself is giving you 11 million bits of information. Your brain can take, let's say, 50 of them. And the way your brain has been designed is to survive, right? So there are different parts of your brain that focus on different things. Now, your logical thinking is governed by a center of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. And this is where, you're stuck in a situation, and if the stress isn't that much, you can figure out a way, okay, you know what, maybe I can solve this problem in some way. But what really happens is your prefrontal cortex gets the information at the last minute. But what gets the information first is a part of your brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala
That's your
is,
primal senses.
yes,
right?
it's your primal senses. So it's the fear center of your brain. And with evolution, this has been designed perfectly, because at any point of time, you want to receive the information that might hurt you first. So everything gets filtered out from the amygdala. And by the time it reaches the prefrontal cortex, it's kind of like, it's a bit too late. You're already triggered with that emotion. And it's very interesting that when you're in vacation mode, you can calm down the amygdala. Other things that can calm down the amygdala, as you mentioned, is like a yoga class, because you're surrounded by different energies of different people, and your focus is at that point either on your breath or either on the position itself or how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And when you bring all of that information in, you're automatically canceling those noises from the amygdala, and you accelerate the prefrontal cortex. So I think this is also very interesting for people to know, because the more you kind of like relax yourself into it, you will calm down that part of your brain that tells you, like, what, you can't do it right, or people are looking at you.
And just to add as well, it obviously depends what emotion comes up. So I've been studying a lot on trauma basis.
Okay.
And it's saying about this, how you can work from the base up or come in through like logic and stuff. And depending on what emotion is triggered, depending on whether there's been a trauma that's come up with that, obviously the brain will go to the thing that, it doesn't matter whether it's a good response or a bad response, it's going to go to the known, right? So if that's all you've known for a very long time and that's your automatic instinct, don't give yourself a hard time if it takes you a while to kind of get into, rather than the reactive, the responsive, right? Because that stuff is deeply embedded.
Yeah, a lot of we mentioned that we're thinking mostly from our conscious mind, but our conscious mind equates to about 10% of the total net activity in our brain, and 90% of the activity that's going on is in the subconscious mind. And what happens is, a lot of the people, when they have things that are deeply embedded in their brainstem, it happens at first stages of life. So when you're a kid,
1 to 7.
Yeah, from 1 to 7, you might hear your uncle talk about something, or you might have your belief set onto that point.
It's crazy. I can remember as a kid, and I would probably only be about 5, right? So I like to sing.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't know, I love to sing, but I couldn't ever do it in public. And I remember as a kid specifically, it was my granddad's girlfriend. I was singing in the kitchen, and I remember her looking at me and saying, "Oh, you'll never do that as a job." And it's nothing. If she said it now, I'd be like, no. But to remember that as a kid, and then that was the first time when I felt like I need to hide my voice, right, where I can't sing. And it's just crazy to think that I remember a lot of childhood memories, but that stuff, the stuff that you remember is the stuff that's actually, what's the word? It has an impact.
Yeah. It basically shows up in everything it shows up in the same lens that you view the world from. And normally any subconscious beliefs at that point is really, I don't mean to discourage anyone, but you also need to know the reality that it takes a lot of work to get into the subconscious, especially at that time, and then change or tweak a few things. There are a lot of ways to do it. There's meditation, and yoga is a very interesting thing that's come up now, because of calming down, like we said, like these primal systems of the brain, you can focus on something new. And every time you do something new, this is another hack for you guys. Every time you want to change your perception about something, or you want to try, you want to learn something different, you have to try something new. Novelty to the brain, whether it is, if you're cycling and you take a different route, or you're trying to get, like Sarah mentioned, get outside the known and step into the unknown just for a little bit, that by itself changes the way your neurons wire and fire together. And at that piece, or at that point in time, if you feed in a new information, there are two ways to do it. One is novelty and one is comedy. So every time you do something novel, some novel seeking experience, whether you're skateboarding or skydiving, and you have a thought process at that point, your brain will embed it really well, and then it's very easy to like go back to it, whether rather than you waking up a morning and telling yourself, this is the affirmation and this is the thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really works is comedy. So every time you laugh, like you really laugh, your brain's pattern recognition system rewires itself. And then if you put in a belief or you put in like a statement at that point itself, then your brain starts to kind of like understand and accept it more easily. Other than that, your ego might step in. How many people do you think which come to your class have some kind of like, or let's say come in with a lot of ego?
A lot.
A lot?
Yeah. I think, the way that the world is now and the way yoga is presented, and I'm guilty of it myself, people do come in, I don't want to say with the wrong intentions, but people do want the physical attainment side, right? They want to be able to do the splits. They want the deepest back bend possible. They want to be able to do handstands. And they let that quest get in a way of the true kind of nourishment that the practice can give.
Mm-hmm. But also, I think one of the reasons that happens is because the way yoga has been portrayed is also, no one is really, I mean, I know that you've been talking about this a lot to your students and to the teachers that you teach, and I've seen it in your videos and stuff, but a lot of people aren't really talking about, the other side of yoga, the holistic side of yoga, the lifestyle aspect of it. And that tends to kind of, just doesn't get people's attention on that aspect.
Yeah.
Also, I remember when I was growing up, I was very, I was fat and obese as a kid. So one of the things that I've always wanted to do is to get in shape because, I went through a lot of bullying in school and things like that. And probably that's why I'm so passionate about nutrition and wellness. But there was a point of time where, one of the primary things I thought to become healthy is to look good in front of the mirror, look good naked. And at that point, anyone who would tell me like, hey, why don't you try yoga? And this is like 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and yoga wasn't that famous at that point. I would tell them like, hey, yoga is not for me. It's for, or lack of a better word, something that sounds like a cat, so
That sounds like a cat. Right. Got
and what happens is I've seen a shift in that thinking perspective. Obviously, it's happened to me. I now embrace yoga, and I've been wanting to learn and go into the depths and understand it more. And have you seen a shift where more men than women are now kind of like catching on the wave and being like, they want
100%.
to?
In Dubai, yes. I think even now, just the general kind of consensus is stretching's good for you, right? People are starting to realize, oh, actually, I need to stretch more. And I think this is why the men come in. But I think, I just think there is just more of awareness in men now as well, especially when they try it and they realize, oh, it's actually quite tough.
Yeah.
So then I feel like sometimes they do get a little bit more macho. It's like, oh yeah, actually I can do yoga, because they try it first and they're like, holy crap, I haven't actually felt these tiny muscles before, right? They've just been working in the gym, isolating the big kind of things. So it is nice to see.
Yeah, it's interesting now. You go into a yoga class, and before, when I wanted to go into yoga class, I would probably be one, or there would be one more guy in the class, and now there are just so many. So it kind of like, as a man, it kind of makes you feel more relaxed, because then when you're in a yoga class and they're all women, you don't feel intimidated, but you have this feeling that, hey, maybe I'm in the wrong place at this point.
Yeah, but it's nice as a teacher as well, because obviously males, they come with their own kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
It's different from having an all-female class. So it's actually nice to have a few males in the room to just kind of balance that energy out as well and just see how it feeds in. It's nice.
Do you feel like women have any kind of an advantage in yoga than men?
I think the only advantage women have is we are generally softer in nature. We're able to surrender easier than you guys.
Okay.
You guys want to fight,
Yeah.
and you want to fight the poses. And I feel like in that sense, yes, there's different advantages. Like obviously with guys, you're naturally stronger, so the stronger stuff comes easily to you. The more flexible stuff comes easier to the women, right? So it's like it's yin and yang. It balances out.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the yin and yang of energy, and as like you mentioned, for a teacher, having both of them present in the room is beneficial. Do you think people become better because there are more people in the room? Do they kind of like grab onto each other's energy, and does that work in a synergy?
Yes, the two ways that it can go. So one can be that people are kind of like performing. Someone next to them's going hard, so they're like, fuck, okay, I need to up my game, you know? Or sometimes as well, you cannot, and I actually get emotional sometimes when I'm teaching. You can't describe the energy and the feeling of when you're guiding a class and everyone's kind of moving and you've got the breath and you're talking like a class of like 18, 20 people. The energy in the room then becomes so in sync and just so powerful that it literally takes my breath away. I'm like, fuck, this is why I do what I do. And people, that's the thing, they're so in their own moments, but it's all these individual moments of connectedness together. They're not going to kind of be aware of it until they reflect on it when they leave the room, right? But me as a teacher watching that and seeing how everyone is just kind of in sync but at their own pace, I'm like, that's life, you know?
Wow. And does that increase your energy levels as well?
100%.
It does.
Like those classes, I leave and I'm like, I don't feel like I should sleep within like a day, you know what I mean?
Wow, that's powerful.
It lifts me up for sure.
And if someone who's listening to this and they have been going to yoga classes, is there a way that they can kind of like, because you mentioned everyone is so having their own tiny moment and they're, focusing on their breath and they're focusing on the teacher and they're focusing on themselves. But is there a way that they can also kind of like understand or see this energy shift and take it back home and get basically go apart from the fantastic things that yoga does for the human body, just take away that energy and go out and say,
I think subconsciously it's going to happen anyway. It's those classes where you walk out and you're like, shh, that was a good yoga class. But I think it's more on the role of the teacher to assist the awareness in the room as well. So like every now and then, it's always in the pauses for me. And I'll get people to just even like say to them, like, just feel the stillness in the room and then notice what it contains, right? Or it's like sending love to the people to your left, to your right. And then if you get everyone kind of concentrating on their kind of sphere around that collective energy, then But you can do that, become more aware of it with yourself, but always in the stillness. You know what I mean? So you have time to reflect.
Harvard University did a study in 2006 or 2007, and they were basically measuring the electrical signals of the heart. And what they found that a person who's in the same room, their energy, their electric energy from their heart can be sensed up to 6 feet, and they even know that it slightly bent towards the left. And what happens, which is funny, is like for everyone who's listening, was there a time that you walked into a room and you probably didn't know anyone, but you felt very comfortable? Or on the opposite end, you walked into a room and there were a few people and they never spoke to you and you don't know about them, but you still started feeling a bit stressed and nervous? And now me and Sarah, we know that we felt this a couple of times. And that happens because your heart has an electromagnetic signature. And why I bring this up is because the more you're aware of it and the more you want to change your personal electromagnetic signature, there's something in the brain called mirror neurons. And the way mirror neurons work is when you see someone, like let's say you see someone yawning or you see someone laughing, a part of your brain wants to replicate the same feeling, the same emotion, and the same act ask the other person. And this is very important because let's say you walk into a room, and if your energy is dominant and you feel like, you feel happy and you're in love with life and you're grateful about everything, there is a very, very strong chance that others will look at you and try to replicate that.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I say you don't always have to catch the energy in the field, but you can intentionally add to the energy in the field. And once the energy in the field is elevated, then everyone catches on to it. You're in sports performance and in peak performance, we note things like heart rate variability. Your heart rate variability goes through the roof. Your resting heart rate goes down. Your recovery increases drastically. And it all happens because you're able to not, I mean, I wouldn't call the word selfish, but you're not always wanting to receive, but you want to add.
Yeah.
And the more you think about that, it's like the cycle of life. The more you give in, it's like the more you receive. So
you bring out what you put in. Look at us on Friday. We're the only table dancing and having fun, right?
Yeah.
Up until like 2 hours, and then
everyone joins. Yeah, actually, I never thought about it.
Thanks, Asif.
Yeah, thanks, Asif, if you're listening to this. And for those of you who are listening, we were in one of our friends' birthday gatherings in a restaurant, and we were a bunch of like 10 people, and everyone was sit down because of COVID regulations, and we just had like a spark in us, so we were dancing and laughing. And at first it seemed strange because all the security guards would come and tell us to sit down, but with time, because of maybe the mirror neurons or the heart's electromagnetic signature, almost everyone over there started dancing. And then everyone kept telling us, like, they came up to us and they're like, thank you guys. Yeah. So we literally added energy into that room.
Yeah, all 10 of us.
Now, if someone, you mentioned like people should start with hatha yoga and stuff like that, what is the minimum effective dose of yoga? Because for me, as someone who loves health and wellness, and there's so many different parts to health, there's the environment aspect, the nutrition aspect, the physical movement. I always try to look for a sweet spot, which I term, like, as actually Tim Ferriss said it first, called the minimum effective dose, which is what is the minimum effort that you need to get, like, maybe not the max amount of result, but like a decent amount of result. So is there a minimum effective dose for yoga, or is it dose dependent?
It's dose dependent because it depends where you come from, right? So if you've come in from quite a sedentary background, I wouldn't recommend going for a full hours class to start with.
Yeah.
Like start on YouTube's, all this kind of stuff. But again, it depends on the person and how long I think it takes to self-regulate. Mm-hmm. Right? So for me now, I can do, in the mornings I get up and it's 30 minutes, but in that 30 minutes, definitely 10 minutes meditation at the end, little bit of journaling. And the first 20 minutes is the movement with the breath, a little bit of pranayama to self-regulate, and then I'm good to meditate, and that's good for my day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely, it's depending what you're working with. Mm-hmm. Some days, 20 minutes of yoga and I'm like, no, my body is just saying, keep going. Like it's going to take me 1 hour. Mm-hmm. But the end goal is always that sweet spot to be able to sit and be like, whew.
Okay. And that's your personal yoga journey, right?
That's my personal.
That's not what you're teaching. This is the first
but again,
thing
it's like a good teacher, or if you are kind of promoted to have this self-awareness and this curiosity from the start, then I'm all about just listening to your body, right? Listening to the signals and adapt the movement and the breath accordingly. So if you start that training from very early on, then again, my role as a teacher is not for you to keep coming to classes. I want you to be able to get up in the morning, or I want you to be stressed as hell at work, be able to roll your mat out and self-regulate like you do in my class, right? So it's that, I think it's just coming again into being able to learn your body, your systems, your reactions, and then through the practice, however long it will take that day, whether it's 10, 20, 30 minutes, but be able to drop that energy back in and find ground.
And is this something that you do first thing when you wake up? So let's walk me through your day. How does a day in Sarah White's life look like?
Right now, it's flipped upside down. But
What would an ideal day look like?
Ideal day, it depends. If I've got early clients, then this will be only my 30 minutes, right? So I get up 30 minutes earlier. I don't touch my phone. I put my lamp on, maybe light a candle. I'll always have my mat rolled out at the end of the bed, so it's ready to go. Little bit of water as well. So water first, and then I get on my mat and I start moving first.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just iron out the kinks. I listen to where my body kind of needs to be felt, different areas, different day. Once I get into the movement, I'll probably use the sun salutations if I've got less time to mix the movement with the breath, because it's the easiest way, right, to just get the systems pumping. Once I feel like I'm dropping in, as in the movement and the breath is steady, I'm at a steady pace, I start slowing it down, and then I find a seat. Then I'll do a little bit of pranayama, slow it down into meditation, 10 minutes. Once I've come out of my 10 minutes, I journal a little bit, just any thoughts, feelings, because usually when you create space like this and when you create routine, that's when you've got space for the messages and the clarity, right? So this is when maybe some, like, because I write a lot as well, some sentence will come up, something will be like, oh, that's going to be my next newsletter, or, you know, so I basically brain vomit onto the paper, then I'm good to go.
Okay. And do you think having a routine and like a movement built in first thing in the morning reduces that signal to noise ratio? Because we have a lot of signal, right, coming into our brains all the time, but there is a lot of noise, which is these things that you don't want to be focusing on. And the trick is, if somehow you can reduce the signal to noise ratio, that kind of like elevates and brings in more like meaningful things. I've honestly, for the last, I think since Feb, I've been doing, normally I would wake up and I would do some stretching and things like that. But for the last 4 or 5 months, I've been trying this new routine. It's an energy routine. Basically, it's adapted. It has 5 yoga poses. And have you heard of it? It's called the Tibetan longevity rites. So basically, there are these people and these monks in Tibet who live an extraordinary long life, and they're quite healthy. And one of the things that they do is these 5 ancient yoga poses. One is the downward dog. One is, I don't know all the names, but one's a downward dog. One's a back bend. One is a bridge, if you call them, when you're like when you have your hands down and then you're just extending your pelvis up to the
reverse tabletop.
Reverse tabletop. And what else is there? There is a spinning exercise. So you basically put your attention and focus at a point, and then you spin anti-clockwise. You put your arms straight, and then you spin anti-clockwise. And what all of these things do is they start your energy cycle. Because when you're sleeping, a lot of your energy, when you wake up with anxious thoughts and things like that, a lot of your energy is stuck in the lower 2 chakras of your body. And for those of you who are listening, chakras are basically these, you have 7 chakras in your body, and they are in different places throughout the body. And they say that each chakra has a different energy field and a different emotion.
Different vibrations.
And different vibration. So the lower 2 energy chakras are the survival energy chakras. And most of the times, because of gravity, whenever you're sleeping, your energy is stuck in the lower 2 energy structures. So whenever you get up, you're either thinking about work or deadlines or paying the bills or things like that. But then if you don't have any physical movement practice, then your energy keeps getting stuck on there. And our DNA and our cells, the way they move is in an anti-clockwise manner. So that's why basically all of these movements take you through different parts of the chakras, and you keep on opening one of them every time until the energy completely flows. And then for me, I also have taken some practices from ancient Chinese medicine, Tai Chi, Qigong, and things like that. And I do it first thing in the morning. And I find that my energy levels are through the roof. It's 21. You could do a short version of it. I think I have it on my Instagram.
Put it on YouTube as a routine.
Yeah, I might do that actually. I've had some Instagram videos about it, but I might just put it on YouTube. It involves a lot of tapping and things like that. Have you experimented with tapping?
Yes, this was what my when I did a meditation retreat, we were doing a lot of tapping and brushing and stuff, but also, you know what your lymphatic system is,
Yeah.
right? So this helps with moving basically the lymph, all the crap, like you say, it's been lying like this as we've been asleep. So I think that has a lot to do with the energy as well, because
Yeah.
it doesn't have a pump, right? So
Yeah.
your pump is the movement. So I think just getting that lymphatic system going, like you say, raising the energy, because you feel heightened
Yeah.
before you step into your day. It's kind of like you've already done the cleanse of, I'm already connected. I'm already kind of grounded
Yeah.
in myself, and then bring this
Then bring on
outside
the
crap.
challenges of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that's very interesting. And what's your current meditation practice look like? Is it 10 minutes in the morning? Do you dedicate some time for meditation?
10 minutes is bare minimum. If I have longer and I've done like a longer practice and stuff, I can sit for like 20 or 30. Sometimes I still do guided. Other times it is just a complete, like how I learned it on the retreat is just a softening in the body, right? So it's like not holding any tension, and just once everything kind of settles, it's kind of like, you know, when you drop a pebble in a lake and you get the ripples.
Yeah.
So the first bits, it's the ripples, right? And then it's getting into a spot where it just feels like utter stillness. Yeah.
And people who are listening to this might have a lot of questions around meditation, because every time the word meditation pops out, nowadays we're blessed that we have all these different apps, and yeah, these apps can go take you through a guided meditation, but meditation is still one of the most difficult things for people to do, and it is one of the limbs of yoga, right? Meditation. So do you have any tips or tricks for someone who's listening and someone who just cannot be with themselves or with their thoughts? Like, what's a good place to start on? And I'm going to reduce this AC a bit because it's a bit cold.
No worries. I think start off slow. Like there's some of my clients that couldn't even do like a minute in Shavasana. So I think start with a minute, and also don't get annoyed at yourself. Like even for me, some days I'm doing my 10 minutes and I can see that my head is already in the day, you know?
Yeah.
But then it's just part of it. So it's like your brain is a muscle, just like your bicep that needs to be flexed. So if one day you feel it and you get that glimpse, amazing. But don't hold on to that, because the next day, part of the journey is you're not going to get there, right? So it's just visiting that spot more often and often for longer. So maybe the first day, all you're doing is sitting and following your breath for a minute. That's all you need to do, a minute, even for a week. Done it for a minute, it starts to feel easy. Go to 2 minutes, go to 3 minutes. It's not like it has to be this massive feat, right, from the start.
Yeah.
And even for me, like I don't imagine myself meditating for longer than 30 unless there is a specific like sankalpa, like I'm out in a Vipassana retreat, you know? So it's, yeah, just make time for it and just gradually.
Okay, so the trick is make time for it, go slow, don't beat yourself up. It's not like you're going to face enlightenment in the first time. And also I think that with meditation, it's also a dose dependent effect. So every time, like if you decided to meditate, it's good to start with 1, 2, 3 and then build it up. But then if you start for the first 7 to 10 minutes, your brain is just going to throw everything at you. And eventually, once you hit the 14-minute mark and then the 16-minute mark and the 25-minute mark, then you become more calmer. So people who are starting out, just because you dedicated 5 minutes per day and it's your brain is screaming at you, that noise will start to lower down with time.
100%. It's like running, right? First mile, you're freaking dead. But then you hit that zone and you're like, actually, it's good.
Yeah, then you have the endorphins, you have all those things running through your bloodstream. And you speak about Vipassana. Tell us what Vipassana is.
Basically, you go on a retreat or wherever it would be, and it is silence meditation all day. You don't speak to anyone. You take the vow of silence, and you'll be meditating on a cushions for hours. You usually have a teacher that will either guide you in it or give you some lectures and how to kind of set yourself up, but it's raw.
Okay. How many days have you attended a
I
Vipassana
haven't.
retreat? You haven't.
No.
I've always wanted to do the 11-day Vipassana.
Yeah.
10 or 11 days it is. And basically you're in a place full of strangers and you're not allowed to look into their eye. You cannot take your phones, guys. So no Instagramming.
And not even writing, and that's
You
what
cannot
gets
even,
me.
you cannot
Yeah.
even write. But I've heard that people have had profound experiences coming out of a Vipassana journey where, your mind is, like we mentioned, like the meditation, your mind is going to try to throw everything at you. Happens for the first day, the second day, the third day, and then the third or the fourth day, your mind gets tired. And when your mind gets tired, you automatically reduce the signal to noise ratio. And once that happens, you start observing things more. Information, like crazy information, might just pop out. Have you tried? So a lot of the people I speak to are, doing a lot of crazy kind of things, like biohackers. And one of the things that is getting acceptance these days is plant medicine journeys. Do you know someone or have you experienced any plant medicine journey yet? Or do you
I
intend to?
haven't. I would. I think as well, you have to be very careful as to why you're doing this and the state of mind of where you're at in your journey, where you are going to take these, because I still see a lot of escapism, a lot of people who maybe aren't ready, like mentally mature enough, and they go down the rabbit hole with these. So one of my friends, actually, you can see that they see it as an enlightened way and that they have a lot more understanding, but they're reliant on this, right? So I think it needs to be used as a tool. Then yes, for sure, it can open you up, especially like microdosing stuff like this. There's been a lot of studies with like psychedelics and anxiety and all that. Fair enough. If it's used as a tool and you get these benefits that are long lasting and you can reflect upon it. But when you start, again, just abusing it and taking it for that kind of released, basically it is a release, it's an escapism from your own reality, right? So when they start wanting that escapism all too much, that's when you need to be like, hey, you're not using it in, not the right or wrong, there's no right and wrong, but in a way that's beneficial to you.
This is for all of those guys who I've spoken to and they're like, I'm on my 20th ayahuasca journey, and I'm like, you don't need to go to the 20th journey. Like, it's clearly something isn't working for you. Like,
And it's people that are generally as well that you find have had maybe addictions or substance abuse in the past, right? But now all of a sudden, it's acceptable because it's an enlightened way. And I'm like, well, no, actually, because your old person, your systems who gets attached to this kind of theory of addictions and stuff, it's still present, but you're just seeing it as a healthier thing. It's same people who are addicted to the gym. People are addicted to basically super strict diets. It's like you've just swapped one thing that was necessarily bad for you for something that you deem as a little bit better, but it's
you're still relying on something.
The programming's still there, right?
Very interesting. And do you think if you had your own school and things like that, do you think the future of education should have things built in like yoga for kids at a younger age, or meditation or breath work? Are you in the camp of supporting things like that?
100%. I would love to go into schools now, because that's a whole different subject, but I do think that they have it slightly wrong, particularly in like the West and stuff. I think just teaching, especially teenagers and even kids, to be honest, just how to self-regulate, to rely on themselves. But then that comes into, we're giving the control back, and do people actually want all these kids thinking for themselves, right? And it's the same. I think there's just too much pressure on kids from a very young age up until 16 to have it figured out. The testing systems, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't help this anxiety kind of generation that we're bringing up, right? I think that all needs to be stripped back. And I'm not sure about you, but the thing that I decided I was going to do at 16, I am not doing it at all, but I'm way happier and a healthier human. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's teaching that self-regulation through yoga and teaching more kind of just life skills. Like say, hey, you know what you think is important now? And what you think you're going to be doing in 10 years, forget it.
Yeah.
And teach them how to deal with change, because it's a constant flux, right? We don't know. I actually posted about this yesterday. The things that we planned very rarely happened, but life becomes so much more beautiful when we're able to just adapt to the change and say, okay, this is coming into my life.
Yeah.
Let's see where that goes.
Yeah. I always think that we make plans and then God laughs, because plans never work out up to a certain point. I mean, you can be prepared for a lot of things, but chances are that life will always, there is only one consistent thing in life, which is change. And this change will always show up. And the better you are, the more adaptive your nervous system response is to the change. Because I see a lot of people, they've been planning for things, including myself, at various points of my life. You've been planning on something and something's going to happen just this way and I have everything figured out. And then suddenly something happens and then you're like destroyed, because you were either not taught or you weren't put into situations where you were, you saw change as a positive thing. And you said like, you know what, it didn't work out like I wanted it to be, but this can be something better. And I think having hope is a very key essential to this, because a lot of people that I see and I speak to don't have a lot of hope in things. And when you don't have hope in things, then you're suddenly your amygdala kicks in, you're uncertain about things, and then all these emotions keep coming. So I would also agree that if you're listening to this and if you're like a director of a school or a university or something like that, or even like a company, spend more time or like invest a little bit in having these essential practices like yoga, breath work, movement built in, so the future generations that come in are more regulated, self-regulated in a way. And we speak about breath work. Now, yoga and a lot of other disciplines have, one of the things is like breath work core embedded in it. Why do you think breath work is so important?
It's going to sound really like simple, but it is the act of bringing more oxygen into the body, right? It's, again, with the breath work, pranayama, it's tapping into a different nervous system. It's slowing you down. And again, it regulates. Yeah. So this is the power of the breath within the practice, and especially if you're able to link that breath with the movement, the effect it has of being able to move, of being able to be in action, but be in that parasympathetic state, showing yourself that I can exert energy with ease, right? Without the kind of
jitteriness.
It's just, for me, it's just showing yourself that actually I can act and I can exert without killing myself, without being this kind of. And I think it's about putting energy out and noticing that the energy you can put out can actually replenish you rather than
take you all out. Interesting. Is there any special breath work that you teach, or anything that you can tell the audience today that they can, if it's safe to do so, and if you're not driving, then, take some time off and practice this?
I always, at the end of my classes, to, again, drop the system down. If you want more of a relaxing breath, I don't believe in set numbers for set people, because some might be able to breathe up to a count of 6, others might be able to go to 7, others might be 3, right? So what I try and do is make the exhale twice as long as the inhale.
Okay.
Exhale has more of the effect of softening, of dropping into stillness. So say if you breathe in for a count of 3, hold at the top, and then exhale for a count of 6.
That breathwork, ladies and gentlemen, has put me into a parasympathetic system.
Just from one breath.
And you will figure it out yourself, because when you're stressed and when you're anxious, or all those emotions that we've spoken about, one of the things that you will notice is that you're breathing very shallow and you're breathing quite a lot. So you're like you're doing this all the time. And
this is what I want to say as well. Try not to breathe from the upper portion of the chest. Try and bring it in and out from the belly.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've got a deeper breath. You're stimulating your diaphragm as well. So then you've got more expensive, again, more oxygen's coming into the system. And then, yeah.
That is very interesting, because a lot of people, most of us, we breathe into our chest and we don't allow the breath to go right into our diaphragm. And what happens is your chest has something called as baroreceptors, and the baroreceptors are linked with a stress hormone in the body called cortisol. So every time you breathe like something like that, when you're stressed or nervous, you activate those baroreceptors, and then as a result, your body automatically increases stress hormones inside. And the time you breathe completely inside in your diaphragm, and you'll feel your rib cage expand and then your diaphragm expand, that's the time you keep in more oxygen, but at the same time, you retain that oxygen as well. And one of the things that you will see a lot of ancient yogis and Tai Chi masters and monks in the Shaolin temple do a lot is that they don't breathe as much. They breathe very less. There's also a saying which says that, your life is how many breaths you take. And the more you breathe, you're shortening your lifespan. And we see this in animal models, right? You have the bluehead whale, which breathes up to 6 times per minute and which stays alive for like about 200 years.
Amazing.
There's the naked mole rat, which is genetically everything in that naked mole rat is very similar to its cousin rats, but it can live up to 15 times more because it breathes up to 7 breaths per minute.
No way.
Yeah. The tortoise, which lives up to 150 years or 200 years, they're having 3 breaths per minute. And what happens is, when you're breathing, there are 2 components of it. One is oxygenizing your blood, but there is another thing. When you breathe in and you exhale slowly, and normally I like to tell people to do it from not mouth breathe, but breathe from the nose and exhale from the nose. You're taking all this oxygen in, and then you're exhaling slowly. And what that does is it builds a back pressure. Mm-hmm. And what happens is your body gets more carbon dioxide than oxygen, and which is not a bad thing, because when I was growing up, everyone told me carbon dioxide is just a metabolic byproduct of lactic acid formulation and things like that. But carbon dioxide has other benefits, because every time you increase the amount of carbon dioxide in your blood, your red blood cells have hemoglobin, which transports oxygen. And there's a curve, which is called the oxygen dissociation curve, which is every time carbon dioxide goes up, your red blood cells dump all the oxygen in the body. So you might be breathing in a lot, but if you don't have enough carbon dioxide, if you don't sustain that exhale, mm-hmm. then chances are that oxygen doesn't get dumped in the blood cells very well. And now you have other people who are even more interesting, and they have these machines called as Carbinogen and things like that. And they literally take in more carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is also shown, if you have higher levels of it, it can also activate the pituitary gland, and it can make you have outer body experiences. A lot of things that they teach in Kundalini yoga and breathwork styles like holotropic breathwork are designed around this phenomenon that when you have more carbon dioxide in your cells, then you have more benefits. So take that time to exhale. And normally you'll see a lot of people who are stressed out, or a normal person would breathe up to 15 times per minute. This is a normal person. Then you see a person who's stressed out and their breath rate goes up to 20 to 25 times per minute. And the ones who are really, really sick, they can breathe up to 30 times per minute. But then when you see people who are very self-regulated and who are calm and patient, and all these enlightened beings and the sadhus that you see in India, they're breathing up to like 5 to 6 times per minute, taking in an air volume of maybe 2 liters. And the ones who are just a bit stressed, they would probably be taking an air volume of 6 liters per minute. So slow your breathing down, make it count. It's not just breathing in a lot of oxygen. You need to make sure that oxygen disassociates from the red blood cells as well. Uh-huh. So that's something that everyone could
I like
kick
it.
in.
Breath lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're on the topic of that, then why not?
it's true.
Now, you you did a retreat in Zanzibar. Do you have anything else planning outside UAE anytime soon?
Outside UAE, no. In
Okay.
UAE, yes.
Tell us about what's coming on. Where can we find you?
What's coming, obviously, when the weather gets better, I have a business boot camp for yoga teachers, freelancers, small businesses. Because I found that our community, we are very good at what we do, but we're not very good with the kind of business side of it, right? No one taught us how to market ourselves. No one taught us how to do a personal brand. No one told us that we had to do a strategy for bloody Instagram and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So me and my very good friend Lucy Mead, who has been in marketing for over 15 years, I think, we've come together and we're going to do a business boot camp. But it's kind of like a day retreat, right? So you'll come, you'll do a yoga class, you'll learn good stuff. You'll do like a fire and ice session or a Reiki session as well.
Amazing.
Then we carry on the learning. We have lunch, breakfast. So it's like we want you to learn, but we want it to be a kind of a reset for you as well. You know what I mean? So it's just all nourishment for your business, but also for some time for you. I'll do the same retreat just for yogis the month after. And then what else? Now I'm at the process of moving my online school as well.
Okay, that's good. Congratulations.
Thank you. That's the big one. I'm like, it's just so much like deep work, but this is
that's good.
Yeah, this is where I'm hoping I can reach more people. Yeah.
And are you doing any classes in a specific academy right now? What's your day-to-day schedule look like? You're doing more personal training?
At the moment, I'm just doing PTs. I have one group class a week at Bear in MOE.
Yeah.
A handstand class and a yoga class, but I've stopped my group classes for now, for summer.
Okay.
Apart from those two.
Is it because you're focusing on other things, or is it?
Yeah, and I think, like Dubai is very seasonal. It's from pretty much September till like May.
Yeah.
My clients and stuff get lighter, obviously, in the summer. Everyone's traveling. So summer for me is the reset for myself.
Okay.
My group classes are very creative. I feel like in order to serve them better, I take a little bit of time away, replenish myself, get things in order, and then my creativity comes back to then serve again.
Amazing. That sounds good.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to find you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Instagram, probably.
Instagram, that's Sarah White.
Yeah, Sarah White with a H, or Sarah_White. SAR, A for alpha, not I, because of my accent.
We will put that in the show notes. And if you guys really want to get in touch with her, you can go onto my Instagram, and we've just posted a story, and I've mentioned her there. Sarah, I don't even know what's the time right now, but I think we'll be coming to the end of this interview.
We're good.
And one of the questions that I'd like to ask you is, if you had a time machine, and if you could rewind back time, and you could go on to meet your younger self to give her 1, 2, or 3, whatever, pieces of advice, what would that be? And you can take your time to think.
Oh man, that's made me emotional because I want to go back and hug her. Like, I feel like my younger self was so lost, number one, and very, not that I was sad, but the world felt heavy, So I'd be like, stop giving a shit. I'd tell her she's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I'd probably tell her to
start singing.
Oh, fuck, I don't know if she could do that. Start singing, but I think the biggest thing that I've now learned with being here in Dubai and being a little bit older was I've always been a commitment phobe, and I've always been this person that's like, I want to be as free as possible. I don't want to commit. I don't want anything in my name because I need to be ready to go. And I don't know where that mindset come from. So I think I'd tell my younger self, like, I thought taking the risk was being able to like just leave at a drop of a hat, right?
Yeah.
But I would tell her, look, take more risks, invest more, stop looking at life as if you're not going to be there in a year, and whatever decisions that you're making, just make the right ones from there rather than thinking about it's not going to last. right? So now I'm trying to switch myself, as in commit to things to make your life better, because I know that it's kind of done me an injustice back then. I should have invested in things and done things properly from the start. And I would have if I didn't have this fear of commitment. So I'll be like, commit, Sarah.
Okay, so that's some good pieces of advice that you can learn from her and probably give if you have a person who's young and upcoming, you can give them this advice, or you can take this advice into your own life or into your own kids. And you said you wanted to hug your younger self, but I'll hug your older self. Come here, give me a hug.
Just older, not old, right?
Yeah, just whatever you are at this moment.
Thanks.
And Sarah, honestly, this has been a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for coming in to the studios and just sharing yourself, telling us all about your life, being vulnerable, because I think that's what a lot of people need right now. Everyone is a lot stuck up, and when they see other people opening up, there is always an emotional side to everyone's story. And the more you're able to talk about it or share it, I feel that there's some kind of energy that gets released as well. I really appreciate for all the work that you've been doing, all the greatness you've brought to the world, all the healing that you've brought to the world. Thanks. And any last pieces that you want to tell the audience before we sign out?
No, that's it. Peace and love to you all. And have a fabulous, beautiful day wherever you are.
All right, so that's about it, guys. This is me, CJ, signing out from Shift with CJ podcast. Everyone have a great and energetic day, a week, a month, a year, a lifetime ahead of you. Take care now. All right.
Boom.